Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:06 on this busy Wednesday morning in your nation's capital. Thanks for tuning in. At 7:35, we'll check in with Nick Minnock, get some updates on some big stories out of Loudoun County, Virginia. Also at 8:05, Chuck Thies. You've heard this story that the Maryland senators are blocking any bill on the RFK Stadium site because they want to grab D.C.'s Air National Guard and incorporate it into the state of Maryland. What is that all about? And what does that mean, by the way, for the Trump administration coming in without the full National Guard complement that they would normally have? All right, we'll get into that with Chuck Thies. And then at 8:35, May Mailman from Independent Women's Law Center about the legal aspects of today's Supreme Court arguments over U.S. versus Skermeti. That's all coming up. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
It was about 24 hours ago when we saw a real major international drama unfold in Seoul, South Korea, as the president declared martial law, and then the parliament voted unanimously against the martial law. There was some question as to where the military was aligned. It looked like a coup, and everyone here stateside, of course, immediately became an expert on Korean law and Pacific Rim politics. And everyone's trying to sort through who the good guys are, who the bad guys are, who the authoritarians are, and who they aren't, who's aligned with North Korea and the Marxist and who isn't. Maybe Gordon Chang can help us out. He's the author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America, and he joins us now. Gordon, thank you for helping us out with this.
Well, thank you so much, Larry and Julie.
First of all, I think it should be said that anything that's going on the Korean Peninsula is in some way, either directly or indirectly, going to be connected to Beijing. Am I wrong about that?
You're not wrong about that, because the Chinese view the Koreans as vassals. They've done that for hundreds of years, yes. And they believe that they should control outcomes not only in Pyongyang, but also in Seoul. Now, the Chinese were not involved in the disastrous decision by President Yoon Suk-yeol to declare martial law, but they will take advantage of it.
You say it was disastrous for him politically, it appears also, but what was at the root of it? Why did he suddenly wake up and decide to declare martial law? What's going on in South Korea?
Essentially, there's a deadlock between President Yoon from the conservative camp and the National Assembly, which is controlled by the Democratic Party of Korea, the leftists or progressives. Now, the leftist camp has engaged in a vicious campaign against South Korean democracy for decades. And they were in disarray. But Yoon's declaration of martial law has brought down universal condemnation, and it will, unfortunately, tar the conservatives for a very long time. Yoon probably will be impeached if he doesn't step down before that. There could very well be all sorts of implications, because the Democratic Party of Korea, the leftists, is very pro-North Korean. Their last president, Moon Jae-in, who was the predecessor to Yoon, was essentially a North Korean agent.
Yes, the sunshine policy, he called it, which sounded like acquiescence to the commies.
And how much Go ahead, Gordon.
Yeah, it was more than just acquiescence. It was actually active support of North Korea, an active attempt to destroy the alliance that South Korea had with the United States. This was a very difficult period for the U.S. until Yoon became president in 2022.
What was the role of North Korea in sort of getting it to such a point that President Yoon would announce emergency martial law? I mean, what were they doing? Because he seems to have indicated that this was a North Korea operation.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is that North Korea has had great influence in the leftist camp in South Korea, especially through its affiliation with the powerful unions in the South. I'm sure that the North Koreans were instrumental in getting the Democratic Party of Korea and its allies in the National Assembly to essentially block all functions of government. They were threatening to impeach everybody. They didn't have grounds for it. Now, unfortunately, they do have grounds, and Yoon should step down from this. Yeah. But clearly, North Korea will take advantage of the situation.
When you declare martial law, you sort of have to already know if the military is going to go along with it. You can't have martial law without the military. And, of course, the South Korean military operates, trains, does exercises almost shoulder to shoulder with the U.S. military. We still have an impressive presence there. So do we know the disposition of the military? Are they going along with this? Did they indicate that they would go along with this martial law yesterday?
They did in the beginning, following orders. And so the soldiers did surround the National Assembly building. But soldiers allowed legislators to get into the building nonetheless. And those legislators then convened. They had a quorum, and they were able to vote against martial law. Yeah. So question what's going on there. Moon, who I mentioned is the leftist president, previous president, appointed a lot of the generals in the South Korean military. So he probably had some friends on the inside in the last 24 hours.
Gordon, I'm wondering if you can just explain a little bit more. You say the leftists in South Korea's support of North Korea. There is no more brutal dictatorship than North Korea. There is no people more tortured than the North Koreans in the world. What in the world are South Korean politicians doing supporting that regime? I honestly, that's news to me. I didn't understand it was so bad there, but could you explain that a little bit more?
I wish I could explain that, Julie, because to me, like to you and to everybody else, it's just incomprehensible. You know, it basically starts with the issue of nationalism, where people in the South view North Korea not as a menace, which they should, because North Korea's regime is dedicated to destroying the South Korean Republic, but they view them as other Koreans. They view them as destitute Koreans, and they believe that the North Koreans would never harm South Korea, despite all the fact that the Kim regime says, and despite what they did in 1950 when they invaded South Korea. Yeah. So, yes, this is really wrong, and it has been a puzzle to outsiders from the very beginning.
We're speaking with Gordon Chang about the events yesterday in South Korea. I'd missed, if it happened, please correct me. Did we hear anything from the Biden administration about this, from the State Department? Was there any official statement with regard to this development?
There was one statement that we had not been informed about the declaration of martial law. Which was a correct statement to make.
Well, that on the face of it is kind of strange, isn't it? Considering how reliant South Korea is on the U.S., not just militarily. I mean, you know, we should remind everybody this Korean War is still unresolved. We're in a ceasefire now for close to 70 years, but they rely on our military and rely on our economy. Shouldn't South Korea have notified America when this happened or before this happened?
Well, that is another very difficult question to answer. I mean, you guys are coming up with really hard ones this morning.
Sorry, man.
I'm glad they didn't tell us, because that would have implicated us in something which was deeply unpopular.
Oh, I see.
So in that sense, it's right. Clearly, Yoon did not think out the mechanics of a declaration of martial law. If he had done that, the National Assembly would not have been able to meet. And so this crisis would have been continuing. But he just completely failed on what you do during martial law. And because of that, the National Assembly was able to meet, as I mentioned. They were able to rescind the martial law declaration, which they have the constitutional right to do. And now Yoon will be impeached. So this was a debacle from every different perspective.
All right, Gordon Chang. Follow him on X. It's Gordon G. Chang. And it's always good to speak with you. If we don't before the holidays, have a great one. Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Merry Christmas, Julie and Larry, and thank you so much.
It's 7:15. I want to remind you that coming up at 7:35, we're going to speak with Nick Minnock, a couple of stories that he can update us on, one of them having to do with the decision by the Loudoun County School Board to shut off cameras during hearings. Listen to this update last night, because, believe it or not, one of the school board members says that the reason we want to shut off cameras at our school board meetings is because we want as much transparency as possible. Couldn't even say it without laughing here. Listen.
For the first time, school board member Arben Estreffi agreed to do an interview with 7 News. I asked him questions on a number of topics, including why did he vote to turn off cameras during public comment when parents speak to him and his colleagues. This year, the Loudoun County School Board voted 6-3 to turn off cameras during public comment, which is when parents can speak to the school board about their concerns. The school board's decision to turn off cameras came after several Muslim, Hindu, and Christian community members attended a school board meeting to ask the school board to stop allowing biological male students to use girls' locker rooms and bathrooms at school.
Yeah.
The school.
It also, by the way, came after a couple of parents were saying, listen, we hear there's literally an MS-13 gang member who's in the country illegally attending school here and has been arrested. What the hell is that about? And then suddenly, no more cameras here. So here's the interview.
Some in those communities believe that was a slap in the face, that you don't want what they have to say to get out in the press, covered by the media, or seen by other community members. So what do you tell your constituents when you chose to turn off cameras during public comment?
I appreciate the question and the comment, and definitely hear those concerns. I've tried to keep an open mind as I vote on any issues.
You ran on improving transparency when you ran for the school board last year. How is turning off these cameras during public comment improving transparency and trust in the community?
I think LCPS has done a wonderful job trying to improve trust. I think our superintendent says, that when we know better, we do better. I think we have a good kind of public comment system that allows everybody to express themselves. We have had listening sessions. We have had documentation, pulling together all of the feedback from those listening sessions.
But how is...
All right, there's more here, but just on that, Julie, honestly, how do you possibly get away with this?
I love Nick Minnock's questions.
Yeah.
Right. He's so he never gives up. But what an absurd person, right? We're trying to improve transparency by turning off the cameras.
Yes.
It is just nothing in Loudoun really shocks me, to be honest with you. It is just amazing what those officials do in that area of Northern Virginia. They're just shameless.
Well, we are having listening sessions. We have much better conversations when the cameras are turned off and no one can hear you.
My experience as a mom with kids in public school and being angry at the school board, there was something about safety in numbers. If you saw somebody else stand up and challenge the school board, you felt sort of more willing to do it. And this is what they hate. They don't want parents to come together, and they don't want, one parent leader standing up. That could lead to more complaints.
Can I tell you something?
That's the design.
You're 100% right, because I have watched these live streams before. By the way, let me just be clear here, and maybe this is self-aggrandizing or something, but the other reason they've turned these cameras off is because they know this show, in particular our executive producer, Heather Hunter, when they have a school board meeting, she monitors the live stream at night. She grabs the audio of those live streams, and it becomes part of our content the next day.
Yes.
That's how we got to know all of the things that happened at these Loudoun County school board meetings over the course, going all the way back to the pandemic.
Exactly.
And that's the last thing they want. They don't want Nick Minnock to know about it. I would love to say the Washington Post, but they ignore local news. They should change their name to the DC Post, not Washington, or DC Government Post, not Washington. They don't cover the region like we do.
It's such a good point, Larry. You think about the figure it out dad, right? And so many of these parents during COVID becoming these going virtual and becoming these sort of heroes, these grassroots heroes. They hated that. And also shining a light on you're absolutely right that they're preventing the media from picking up on this.
Yeah, and by the media, honestly, I mean this show and Nick at Channel 7, and that's about it, because no one else in the media is covering. That's Brandon Michon, by the way, who I'm sure will be happy to be known as the Figure It Out Dad from now on. A little bit more of this interview just to make sure. I just want everyone in Loudoun County to understand that their school board member, Arben Estreffi, says in this interview that the reason they've shut off cameras and microphones at their school board meetings is because they want to facilitate the conversations and increase transparency. That's the party line here.
Sessions.
But how is turning off cameras improving transparency?
I hear that. And I think for me, again, part of that decision is really thinking about other people that could come to the school board meeting that may not want to have their, especially when it comes to a controversial issue that they want to express their opinion about.
If that was the case, they can meet with you privately. But this is a public comment period. It's very clear when you come to a public comment period, you're going to be heard by the public and by your school board representatives. One of your colleagues on the school board who voted to also turn off the cameras with you said she wanted to avoid a Jerry Springer episode. Do you agree with what she said?
I mean, I won't comment on another school board member's comments. I mean, for me, again, I think that when you compare us to other school divisions, I think that we were able to show that.
All right, we're going to talk to Nick Minnock coming up in about 10 minutes. Some people might not want to be seen or heard. Well, it's a public comment. 7:23. You've heard me talk about. May I just say real quickly before I want all the people of Loudoun County to just for a moment take a moment out of their morning and just consider the fact that they are led by morons. Thank you.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:37. It's O'Connor and Company. Thank you for being part of this morning and letting us ride shotgun with you. Whatever your morning duties are, we're glad to be a part of it. Coming up at 8:05, Chuck Thies on this Maryland power grab, it appears. They'll go ahead and let RFK area be the new Commander Stadium, but only if D.C. gives up their Air National Guard back to Maryland. What is this? We'll get into it at 8:05. Also at 8:35, May Mailman of Independent Women's Law Center on the Supreme Court hearings going on, coming up in about an hour there, U.S. versus Skermetti. This has to do with transgender procedures in Tennessee. That's all coming up. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Joining us right now is my fellow Michigander, Nick Minnock, although I don't know if he's a Sparty or a Wolverine, but Nick, what a great game that was over Ohio State, wasn't it, Nick? Nick?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Good morning. How are you?
Well, thank you. All right, let's flip back to Loudoun County, Virginia there, as we just played a bit of your extraordinary interview with Arbin Estrefi, and I want to commend you for keeping a straight face as Mr. Estrefi, a member of the school board, was making the case to you that the reason why they shut down cameras was out of transparency. Was I understanding that right? Were you understanding that right?
Right. Arbin Estrefi and many of the Loudoun County School Board members ran for their seats last year, and many of them ran on transparency and trust. Estrefi actually had in big, bold letters on his campaign website, improving transparency and trust. So he asked Estrefi, how is turning off cameras during public comment on improving trust and transparency? It's what he ran on. And he has no problem with turning off the cameras. And he did avoid many of our questions, but I do give him credit for sitting there for 35 minutes as we asked him many questions, not just on the cameras, but also does he support biological male students entering girl locker rooms and bathrooms at school. And he avoided many of those questions too. But
he did. But I want to point out, and this is really good of you to draw focus on that one of the public debates that was going on as the school board decided that they wanted to shut those cameras off in the name of transparency, of course, had to do with families, immigrant families, first or second generation immigrant families, families of color who were objecting to those transgender policies. And I think that impacted their decision. You suggested that it may have, and did you get any straight answer from that?
Right. So, speaking to these families who went to that school board meeting on February 27th of this year, many of them were Muslim, Hindu, Christian community members. You usually have your regular parents who show up to meetings, but this was a total new batch of community members showing up, expressing their concerns about LCPS allowing biological male students into girls' locker rooms and bathrooms at school. And one after another, they asked Estrefi and the school board to reverse that policy. The very next meeting, the school board turned off the cameras on the parents. So speaking to the families who came and spoke and the students who came and spoke, they felt like that was a slap in the face. Yeah. And so it certainly looked to them like they turned off the cameras on them because they were saying something that the school board didn't want to hear. And what's important to remember with them shutting off the cameras, this was really the first time this year we've seen the school board begin It's retaliatory behavior against the community. There's several other examples where they've retaliated against staff aides. We've talked about this on your show earlier this year. Staff aides, Dina Griffiths, a school board member, and also parents.
Well, Larry and I talked earlier about how they also want to avoid this sort of viral videos, which then you report on and we report on. I'm thinking of Marion Jensen. She was that Prince William County parent who challenged the mask mandates very effectively. And Brendan Michon, I called him earlier the figure it out dad. They hate those viral moments. They hate sort of parents challenging them. But again, isn't this a little bit about wanting to avoid the media following up on this?
Right. So they hired this new superintendent, Aaron Spence, and he brought with him from his previous school system a woman named Natalie Allen. She runs communications now with Loudoun County Public Schools. She makes more than $250,000 as a communications person. And they have many other staffers in that comms department. So yeah, they shut off the cameras. So those of us in newsrooms trying to keep an eye on what's happening at these school board meetings, we can't really see what's happening if the cameras are turned off. Or we could send a camera there, right, a photographer, and go and cover it. But even when we do that, they make it very difficult. For instance, they won't provide a malt box. So even if we go, we can't capture audio of the speakers. And so it seems like they're putting roadblocks in the way of the press in covering these public meetings. That's for sure.
Speaking with Nick Minnock, WJLA, local Channel 7 here. Nick, I understand you have an update on that story that happened during the campaign, the break-in of the Trump headquarters in Loudoun County. What's the latest?
Yeah, so the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office, they've worked with authorities in California. They've found the man who broke into the Trump headquarters campaign office in Ashburn, Virginia, in Loudoun County. And we know that this man has a criminal history. He's 39-year-old Toby Shane Kessler. And they found him, and it looks like they're going to extradite him to Virginia. But the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office isn't saying more than that until they get more information. And for example, what is he charged with in California? Because that's how they found him, as he was arrested there.
Uh-huh. And still no motive, though, in that break-in that we know of?
Not yet. And when we reported on this in September, or August rather, the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office didn't know what he took with him. Mm-hmm. Could it have been campaign signs? Could it have been materials? It's a campaign office, right? So there's papers everywhere. There's computers. So they're still trying to determine that, which might speak to motive.
All right, Nick Minnock, always great work. We hope you had a great Thanksgiving. If we don't talk to you, have a great holiday season, and the new year is looming. Enjoy it. Keep up the great work.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Join us for the 2024 Fisher House Radiothon Grand Finale, Friday, December 6th, from 3 to 6, live from Fair Oaks Mall on WMAL.
You're all doing the dance right now. Keep your hands on the wheel, all right? Just use one hand. You're all doing what has now become known as the Trump, the dance that goes along with this song. Well, we've got an update on the YMCA for you. Apparently, for the first time in 40 years, that song has hit the top 10 in the charts with downloads and with play everywhere. And, of course, it's because it's become a phenomenon linked to Trump rallies. And the writer of that song, co-writer Victor Willis from Village People, has come out with a Facebook post, Julie, said, listen, I'm really glad that I granted the rights to this. Clearly, Trump was enjoying himself. He loves the song. The people at his rallies loved the song, and that's what this song was all about. It was to get people up and enjoy life and have fun with it. And, oh, by the way, I've made a couple $1 million thanks to this licensing just in the last couple of days. Then he went on to make a point. He said he's really getting angry that people in the media are constantly referring to this as a gay anthem. He said this song was not written in any way to be a gay anthem. And I'll be honest with you, I forgive me, I thought everything Village People did was kind of a gay anthem. I mean, they were pretty gay, you know. Greenwich Village, they dressed up like iconic sort of gay sort of. Anyway, but he says no. In fact, he's threatening to sue media outlets who say it's a gay. I don't think he can sue over that. I mean, even if you didn't intend something to become a gay anthem, if the gay people adopt it as their anthem, it is what it is, right? I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that ship has sailed. I mean, I appreciate that he's the writer and he was part of the band.
And he, by the
he's
way,
trying
says,
to-
I'm not gay. He's like, he was the guy who dressed like the motorcycle police officer, by the way.
Right. It's been decades, and it's going to be very hard to walk that back. But it is nice to have a recording artist not appalled. Remember Dave Grohl was like, "Oh, don't use our music."
Don't you? Oh yeah. Oh no, it's not just him. I mean, the music that has been banned from Trump using it includes Aerosmith and Rolling Stones, Queen, Ozzy Osbourne, Neil Young, Nickelback. Nickelback should be happy for the play. Anyway. This is my favorite part of the post, though, where he tries to go out of his way to prove that YMCA is not a gay anthem. Listen to this. As I said numerous times in the past, that is a false assumption based on the fact that my writing partner was gay, and some but not all of the Village People were gay, and the first Village People album was totally about gay life. But this song was as straight as could be. So I want everyone to stop referring to YMCA as a gay song.